In this video, I'm going to be covering Chilbert. So Chilbert is an S tier water element slime. He is a free-to-play slime. You do have to purchase him with gems, but you can get him as a free-to-play player without really spending any real money. Prior to getting Chilbert, your other option for a water element slime is ARP. Because ARP is a B tier slime, he's going to have less attack and just HP as far as his base stats. Chilbert's going to have a little more. I'll get into just as far as later in the video, I'll talk about just an overall assessment of Chilbert though. After going through all his unique skills, showing gameplay, there is another water element slime you can get in the game right now, which is Nepris. He's one of the strongest slimes of the game, but he is actually only purchasable with real money. So as far as free-to-play slimes, your options are ARP and Chilbert. So as mentioned, I'm going to start just by going over each of these milestone abilities, like the bonus knockback chance attack, and then I'm going to get into his unique skills, show him off just as far as gameplay, and then just give an overall assessment of Chilbert. So Chilbert for his level 10 ability, so he gets plus 10% bonus knockback chance. Bonus knockback chance isn't going to be just that big of a deal. You're not going to be able to delay the enemies that much. So it just as far as whether we should care about this or not, it's not going to make a big difference. So when you're considering using Chilbert versus another slime, probably wouldn't really take that into consideration. Now for level 25, we get plus 20% bonus attack. And just because Chilbert is an S tier slime, note when you compare him to like ARP, Chilbert is going to be getting a little more bonus attack. So for ARP's level 25 ability, he gets plus 10% attack. For Chilbert's 25 ability, he gets plus 20% attack. And this is just going to help scale Chilbert's base stats. So Chilbert's already base attack of 33,900. We're going to get an additional 20% off of that, as well as that plus 20% bonus attack. It'll scale off of all the equipment and stuff, so having this bonus attack is pretty nice. Now for level 50, we get plus 60% HP. For level 75, plus 80% critical damage. This isn't a ton, it's just as far as the scale of critical damage goes, especially if you don't have a lot of critical chance. So really, it's a decent ability as far as damage, but because like when we look at Chilbert, where Chilbert has some bonus critical damage, but we go in over to the attack stat, you can see I already have a bunch of critical multiplier, but unless your critical chance stat's really high, that critical damage actually won't help as much. So if I actually go over to ARP, you're going to see ARP has some built-in critical chance, plus 35% critical chance. And you do actually want over 100% just because enemies can have critical resistance. This isn't as big of a deal earlier in the game, but later game, enemies will have more critical resistance. So you'll need more than 100% chance to actually land those critical hits. But this is kind of one of those areas where Chilbert falls a little short as far as he's getting bonus critical damage, but if he can't deal critical damage all the time because he doesn't have a high crit rate, that is a bit of a weakness to take into consideration there. For level 100, we get plus 80% bonus attack. Now, so this is a total of plus 100% bonus attack, plus 60% bonus HP, so we're getting pretty good percentage stats there. For level 125, plus 10% bonus attack speed. This is always nice just because attack speed is a pretty good just factor as far as how much damage your slime can output. Once you get a lot of attack speed runes and stuff though, this isn't going to be as big of a deal. But especially early on, it's a nice jump. For the level 150 ability, and this is going to affect all slimes in battle. So for normal mode, when you're using just one slime, this will only benefit Chilbert. So Chilbert's going to get a 6-second rage buff in battle. So when he triggers that rage buff, his attack's going to be increased by 30% for 6 seconds. And this triggers every time Chilbert kills 100 enemies. Now, if you're in hard mode, this will actually trigger for Chilbert as well as another slime. So this is nice just because in hard mode, or just further when they release hell mode, this will just be able to give you bonus damage output. For the level 175 ability, we get plus 15% lifesteal. Lifesteal is a pretty good stat as far as keeping you just alive. And then with this kind of synergizes pretty nicely with the water epic water artifact. So if we go and look at the epic water artifact, what it does, so it increases your shield HP, and then it actually allows your regeneration and lifesteal to restore your shield HP when your shield HP gets damaged, you don't have to wait for if you have the ability in the Tower of Elements where every 6 enemies you defeat instantly restores it, or you don't have to just wait for that shield HP cooldown for your shield HP to reset. So having a lot of lifesteal, this does synergize pretty well with that Epic Water artifact. And then for the level 200 ability, it's a unique skill, Frost Nova, which I'll get to in just a second. But you have to have Chilbert leveled up to level 200 to even unlock this final passive. So getting onto the unique skills, so for his just primary skill is active ability. He releases Ice Power, deals AoE damage, 1500% of your attack to enemies within the area. And then for his second passive, we have Ice Blade. Chilbert's attacks will have a 20% chance to freeze enemies for 1.3 seconds. Now note, and I talked about this in an earlier video, and we'll see it just soon, is just that the way stun works on later stages, even though this seems like it's a pretty cool ability, you have a 20% chance to stun them for 1.3 seconds. Well, stun or freeze, just because of how this is implemented, the way enemies have status resistance, we're not actually going to see just a big delay in the enemies. We're not going to see a huge freeze. So that's kind of just a downer as far as how this actually works. So in practice, it's not as good as it looks up front. Then for this final unique skill, if you have Chilbert to level 200, so enemies killed by skills will leave a Frost Nova on the ground. Frost Nova will detonate after 5 seconds and freeze nearby enemies for 2 seconds. As we're going to see in gameplay a little in just a second, this actually isn't going to be that big of a help. So we're going to hop into battle here, and then I'm going to show you kind of just how a few of these abilities work. So this is just his main active ability. Obviously, you can set this to counter or range, so it just fires automatically, but you can also just click the ability and manually use it. You can target it here. I'm going to throw it on this guy down here. You can see it doesn't deal a ton of damage, but it is an AoE kind of thing, so it will deal just damage to a larger area. But as far as the actual amount of damage it deals, it's not going to be a ton. Now for this second passive ability, so we can remember he has a 20% chance to deal a 1.3 second stun. And it's really hard to tell, but if you watch carefully on the enemy's feet, every once in a while you're going to see ice just appear around their feet. And we're at 1 time speed, but just because of how much status resistance enemies have in the game, you're just going to see that it definitely doesn't happen for 1.3 seconds. It might happen for a tenth of a second. I mean, it is very brief. You saw it a little just on that guy towards the bottom of the screen. Now for this final ability, that final passive, so enemies, when they're defeated by abilities, they have that chance to drop that little Frost Nova thing. And so what we're going to see when we kill some enemies here, every once in a while you're going to see these little just floating crystals. And we're not seeing a lot yet, so I'm going to speed up the battle a little. Okay, we saw one. Here we can see a few up towards the top. And then after 5 seconds after they spawn, they're going to explode, and then they can freeze enemies around it once they explode. But really just in practice, when we're speeding this up, we're just seeing it's not actually helpful a lot just because they appear, and then you have to wait 5 seconds for it actually to do anything and hope an enemy's nearby. So while it's a cool ability or whatever, in practice it actually just isn't that helpful. Now the final thing I wanted to just showcase is the level 150 ability, and that's just one every time 100 enemies are killed, Chilbert's going to get a 30% damage just buff through rage for that 6 seconds. So if I speed it up a while, when we're going to actually see this rage take into effect, we're going to see a little icon, not that icon. We're going to see a different icon just appear up above Chilbert's head. So that little red one we saw right there, that's that rage bonus. So one that's active, that's when Chilbert's actually going to be getting a damage bonus. It doesn't last super long. There we are again. But that's within those 6 seconds after he kills 100 enemies, we're going to get a little damage boost. Just because it's not super consistent, I personally just don't really like it that much. So overall, just as kind of as far as a summary of Chilbert, so he has some cool things. He has some extra lifesteal. He has, some okay abilities. I don't really love any of the abilities. He does have pretty decent base stats when compared to ARP, but really the reason why I don't really love him when compared to ARP, and actually if you're a free-to-play player, a lot of times, I mean, early on, those just bonus percentages might make a big difference. But late game right now, I actually don't really notice any of a difference when I'm using ARP versus Chilbert. In some cases, I actually make it further using ARP just because ARP does have some bonus hit rate, which is helpful just as far as hitting enemies, that 30% bonus hit rate, and then 35% bonus critical chance, as well as a level 150 ability is a pretty just consistent one. So if you're free to play, really, there's no reason to have to get Chilbert. You're fine skipping him and just using ARP, especially if you're using it with that Epic Water artifact. But that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions.